Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I thought I would do something a little bit different this time around, basically because I am a little burned out with the PTCGO ladder grind, trying to get some good games for deck tech and all that. There hadn't really been any deck that had been speaking to me for a little while, and I just thought it had been a while since we got to show off some like physical cards in a video here, and since I've been on a little bit of a collecting kick with the help of my lovely girlfriend there, I thought it might be fun to just kind of show you guys like what I've been collecting, what I've been building, for example, and also talk about how I have this wonderful little sub hobby, I guess, of now picking up foreign language cards. So I mean, why don't we just start with that since I'm holding the pile as is. So I had been a little bit bummed out because I hadn't been able to get my hands really on any Evolving Skies sealed products. Things being what they are right now, it was basically impossible to find the product at a reasonable price or at all. Thanks to shortages and then scalpers doing what they do. So yeah, I'd been really bummed out. I think I literally only opened one pack of Evolving Skies, and I didn't like my odds as is because, well, the English sets at least have been getting a little bit more bloated. But over the holidays, my girlfriend actually bought a box of EV Heroes, or Ibui Hiroju, as it's pronounced in Korean, with the help of her wonderful sister over there who went hunting around the game shops in their hometown there to pick it up. And it was really cool. I've never opened up a set that followed the Japanese release, so I was actually a little bit hopeful because Evolving Skies being as big as it was, I didn't think I'd be able to pull what I needed, especially like my favorite evolutions. But with this set being a little bit smaller, chances were good I would get something I needed, and yeah, it turned out I absolutely did. I mean, like Espeon, like Vaporeon, whatever. Jolteon was a nice pickup, but the two I think that really just made my day when I pulled them were Leafeon and Umbreon, or Ripia VMAX and Bureki VMAX, as they're called there in Korean. So I love these two evolutions. They're arguably my favorites, and I've been wanting to build these decks in English for a little while. But if you live in Ontario, you know that these guys are not cheap. At least at the time of release, and for a little while after. A single copy of Umbreon VMAX have been going for $40-45. I'd seen them as high as 50, which is a little crazy if you want to, let's say, get a 4-3 line of the VMAX, or even just the 4-2 line that everybody had been playing. And even Leafeon, which was supposed to be like a more budget choice, it was $20 easily for one of these. So even like, again, building out your 4-3 line of the V and VMAX would be pretty expensive. And just finding them was pretty hard as well. They were sold out for quite a bit everywhere, which frustrated me to no end. But pulling these was easy enough. Like even just the fact that I got the couple of Jolteons out of the pack there, out of a single box, was kind of bonkers. And I have no doubt that if I bought another box of Yubi Heroes, or Yubi Hiroju, that I would I'd probably see a couple more of these at least. Definitely the V's, so I kind of hope, and I know it's not going to happen, but I would actually love to see the like English, European, and I guess Latin American releases following the Japanese sets a little bit more, because it was so nice. Even just the commons I pulled, I got a lot more of what I wanted. I filled out a couple of play sets of some commons and rares that I'd been on the hunt for over here. And that's just not something you can really do buying a booster box these days. Certainly not like, let's say, if you bought Fusion Strike, which is a catastrophe of a set on its own. But I thought this was really cool, and I think as long as my Korean improves a little bit and people around here are chill, I wouldn't mind subbing these in and certainly playing with them. And if things work out this year and travel restrictions aren't too bad, and I'm able to find the time to fly out with my girlfriend, then once we go to visit her folks in Korea, I think it would be really cool to maybe sleeve up a deck and go play at one of the local game shops there. Again, if I don't embarrass myself too much with my terrible Korean. So otherwise, I think one thing I've also enjoyed doing recently is building and upgrading classic archetypes. I got a little bit hooked on watching, I believe it's Drew Allen's Snowpoint cast. Seeing all these old decks in action, like all laid out there, has been really, really fun. And one of the ones I got completely obsessed with at the time was Plasma. Seeing him lay out I think it was the States World Championship version of it. It was just so cool. It had everything I liked, like a ton of like special energy, that kind of stuff, energy acceleration, the fact that it was like its own archetype. I just really love that. And, it's got a lot of my favorite Pokemon too, like Lugia and Deoxys and all that. And the art on these cards was just so gorgeous as well. So I kind of had to go through and build this guy here. It was not cheap. I had to make some substitutions, like throwing in the Articuno since I cannot reasonably find a Palkia. And it definitely took me a little while to hunt for these guys there. They were not cheap, especially to find like the actual card and not like the World Championship back printing. Ditto for things like Prism Energy and all that, which are getting very hard to find in the wild. And I just kind of like smushed it together with some newer cards, just to see like, hey, if you had access to, let's say, the trainer in the energy pool now, but not the Pokemon, what would like a more modern Team Plasma deck look like? Which I thought was pretty fun. As an exercise, I did kind of the same thing for Mega Gardevoir EX. Megas, just as a concept, I think is really cool. Love the dual types as well. I kind of wish VMAXs took more of this approach. Like, if you didn't have the tool, for example, like you ended your turn when you evolved into these, right? It was a pretty serious resource commitment. And again, like they were pretty powerful. They're up into the 200s in their HP, but certainly not 3 prize like behemoths that like you still have to take out 3 of these at least to end the game, and you could actually contend with them with single prizers. And again, they were balanced by the fact that you couldn't really turbo a bunch of these out, right? So definitely really cool. Again, just throwing together some more modern cards, trying to see like, hey, how would I upgrade this and make it a bit more viable, in a world, let's say, where 3 prizers did not exist. So definitely a really cool exercise, and I'm looking forward to doing more of that, especially as I get my hands on some of the really old cards, or at least, older stuff. Heart Gold, Soul Silver in particular, I have been obsessed with this set recently. I think the cards are absolutely gorgeous. I think a lot of them, just mechanically, like with what they do, they're super interesting. Like the Shaman, for example, just benching that to rearrange the energy on your board, that is really cool. And I can't imagine having access to this, in a time when we have Scoop Up Net, right? The ability to reuse this over and over again, like shuffle around energy and, let's say, evacuated damage VMAX, like basically getting a scramble switch, to like load up a new VMAX on the bench, let's say, and bring it in. That would be pretty crazy. Smeargle with Portrait, also bonkers. The fact that you could, basically get yourself access to the effects of 2 supporters in a turn, once by copying something your opponent had, and then obviously playing your own supporter if you had it for the turn. That is also bonkers. I think this would like just absolutely break open the format now if we had it being able to, let's say, boss something and then play like your own Professor's Research. That's just totally nuts. Totally nuts. Also nuts is Junk Arm. I cannot believe that in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, you had access basically to Dowsing Machine or Item Finder at 4. That is absolutely insane. And I can see why in the Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Black and White formats, why this was obviously like an instant 4 of, or at least 3 of, in pretty much every deck that was run there. Just the idea of being able to toolbox your items, as opposed to toolboxing your supporters with something like VS Seeker. I just thought that was a really cool, novel concept. And again, a good thing we do not have access to this right now, or access to things like the unerrated Pokemon Catcher, which is busted without that coin flip. Also been getting my hands on some older stuff. After kind of diving into Heart Gold, Soul Silver, I started looking at the Diamond, Pearl, Platinum block as well. So stuff like Luxury Ball, for example, it was really cool. Basically being like Master Ball, except you can grab the level X's. I thought that was pretty sick. Getting a hold of an old e-reader card in Fastball, which I think is really fun too. I love the idea of like excavating stuff to search for something specific. It's like a much cooler, less viable, probably, Great Ball. And then, like the OG computer search as well. I cannot afford the $60 ace spec. So as long as people at locals are cool, I wouldn't mind using this every now and then. And, it's just cool to kind of get access to something a little bit older like that. Something that I didn't even realize like how good of a card it was when I was a kid and collecting this stuff. Speaking of stuff that I maybe wouldn't have had access to back in the day, and certainly things that are more reasonable in cost now, Shaymin EX, because this thing got banned, prices have actually been pretty reasonable, and to build out a lot of the classic decks, like a lot of them just don't work without Shaymin, so it's been really cool to kind of piece these together, grab them for like $6, $7, $8 a piece, and as long as you don't mind them maybe being a little bent, which you can work on a little bit, especially when when things aren't so cold. It's just going to be really cool to sleeve these guys up, maybe put them in Mega Gardevoir, for example, to discard with that Despair Ray, throw them into like OG style Night March decks. Just a really, really cool card, and I'm glad that I can get them now, long after their prime, for a pretty reasonable price. Also on the hunt for more of these guys, more of these guys, and more of these guys. I really love these older cards here. Junichi EX, still actually pretty usable, abusable even with access to Scoop Up Net. Landorus, just one of my, Landorus Therian, one of my favorite Pokemon and one of my favorite cards. I love the design of this. I love the bench sniping. I love that it has this big damaging attack, but it comes at a cost, like big bulky guy. Resistance to lightning, not something you see very often, just a really cool card. And then obviously Mewtwo EX, I was not playing at the time when Mewtwo Wars were a thing, but I just think it's a really cool card, and once I can kind of round out a playset of these, I think it'll be really fun to play with some like Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black and White decks, and have my own Mewtwo Wars, maybe have like Landorus, Mewtwo, like Raichu, big basics basically, take on maybe like a CMT or like Mewtwo Darkrai. I am so desperately searching for 3 more copies of this card. You would think Celebrations would make getting this guy a little bit more reasonable, or that the Celebrations print itself would be like pretty fairly priced, but no, the Celebrations print of this is going for like 20 to 25 bucks each, which is a little bonkers, and it has done nothing to the price of the originals whenever they do pop up in the wild. So the hunt continues for the Mewtwo's, but definitely a card I would like to see more of. And then just some like really retro things I picked up. My girlfriend was pretty cool. Said, hey, basically, if you're looking for some really like old rare cards, I will get you some for Christmas. Here's your budget. Go ham. So again, after watching some of Drew's videos, I think the Delcatty, I decided to grab that after seeing his Gardevoir deck profile. And then the Pidgeot, I can't remember which one he covered. I think this was part of like a Pidgeot Nidoqueen deck, if I remember correctly, that did really well at Worlds ages ago, but also pretty nuts, like just a free Omni Search every turn on a pretty good stage 2 at the time. And then some like really cool celebration stuff like Cleffa and the Claydolls, obviously, which are bonkers support Pokemon in their own right. And then just some other fun stuff, just getting some of my faves like Empoleon, for example. Really cool ability. Really fun to use this with Archies in a Night March deck. Just saying, that is good fun if you're playing some like X and Y era games, for example. And then this really fun Zapdos as well. I love the art. I love like the Evolutions card design. It is absolutely ridiculous and not practical to play. But I just think it's really cool, and I wanted to get my hands on it for a little while. And just other really interesting stuff like the supporter design in Heart Gold, Soul Silver is really cool. Like Black Belt, basically, if you're behind on prizes, your active Pokemon hits for 40 more damage against the enemy active. Like, that's bonkers in and of itself. Sage's Training, like a really cool card. I think that stuff like Mad Party would love to run because you're excavating, like the top 5, and then you pick 2 to add, and the rest goes to your discard. Like, that's kind of bonkers when you think about it. Twins too, like a very different approach to teammates. You just have to be behind on prizes in this particular case, and then you can just play it for a double Omni Search. That is absolutely insane. And just some more like fun items like Dual Ball, for example, which would be totally busted in like new VMAX right now. You could play this consistently throughout the game, I'm sure, like set up your Genesect army and just thin out your deck as much as possible. They're just more cool stuff like Special Energies, which I'm always a big fan of. I think Rescue Energy as a concept is cool, kind of like Rescue Scarf back in like the old Trevenant decks. Just really interesting, whenever you had the colorless cost, having access to that. DDE, of course, absolutely broken and necessary. if you're going to be playing with some of the more interesting dragon cards out there. And then for whenever I finally get my hands on enough Greninjas, I should have enough splash energies ready to get that rolling. And then, you know, just an older printing of DCE. I am a fiend for these cards as well, and I like the kind of like dirty, smudged look of the DCE from this era. Would still love to really get my hands on a Heart Gold Soul Silver era. It's just one, it's just one of those DCEs, but still, you know, I love the older printings of them. The evolutions and OG printing are still probably my favorite, but I really love the character of these guys, you know, of all the old DCE cards. They're just really awesome. You know, and then just picking up some cool Pokemon like the old Crobat line, for example, where you can continuously ping with damage, you know, pick up some Night Marchers for when Mad Party's a little boring, spice things up with the modern reprint of Dunsparce. I think that's pretty good, like an Omni Surging Roserade, Magnetic Draw and Electro. Just some really cool old cards that you don't see played very much. But in like a more casual format, when you're not worried about like gigantic 3-prizers or whatever the case may be, like a lot of these actually can make for some really good fun games. And I'm hoping that part of what I can do now that I've been collecting, you know, some of these classics is I can actually do a bit more tabletop gameplay as well. I would love to really build out some retro decks and try that. You know, play some like remote tabletop games, for example. I think that would be really cool, so I can kind of see what I missed out on by not playing back in the day. But also, I'd kind of like to combine some of these older cards with newer ones, kind of like I've done here with the Plasma deck, just to see if like, hey, you could breathe some new life into like an old archetype, give them access to some different tools, for example, and see if that would make the gameplay a little bit more dynamic. That's definitely something I want to try out, and something I'm looking forward to doing once my next block of arrivals comes in. So I don't know. It should be fun. I'm really looking forward to just dropping in a ton of these old cards, like playing around with some of the banned ones too. Just totally going ham and experimenting and seeing what kind of fun decks I can build. A lot of people are dissatisfied with standard right now. I get it. But hey, you know, retro content is fun. There's nothing wrong with playing expanded or even playing unlimited. And as long as I think you're clear about like the house rules and everything, you know, encourage a little bit of creativity in your deck building, I think you can have a lot of fun picking up the old cards you might have lying around, or just grabbing some old singles, smushing them together and making something totally new. You know, I think there's a lot of room for that, and I think that might be a very rewarding way to play the game right now. I'm certainly hoping so. So, you know, I think that'll be about it, guys. I have rambled for more than long enough. Again, just wanted to really like share what I've been up to, what I've been collecting, share a few thoughts, I guess, on the game. And, you know, we will be back to our regularly scheduled programming pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. And hey, you know, until next time, and as always, take it easy.